Come fly with me, far beyond the density, gazing down upon the matrix where you are free to see the cage, a place to which you refuse to be bound, because your mind, your soul, was always meant to soar with the eagles. Welcome to Beyond the Matrix.
Greetings, everybody. It's me, Patricia Cori, and if you see a big smile on my face, it's because look who I'm with. The wonderful Kiara, the wonderful David, and I'm right in the middle. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that, right? This is Patricia Cori, welcoming you to Beyond the Matrix, the program that asks you to exit the box, soar with the eagles, let your spirit and your mind fly beyond the matrix. And we are going to do that today with some pretty controversial, not that I'm new to controversy, information. And the subject today is Black Hat, White Hat. Well, where are we now? So let me give you a quick introduction. Above, I have the wonderful Kiara, who together with below, David, have this extraordinary podcast called The Age of PANDORA. You're just being silly. You can tell we're in a good mood here, people.
Here we go.
You know, I just think it's so important, all kidding aside, that we keep our sense of humor and joy. And no matter what we talk about, no matter how heavy or difficult the information is, we've got to keep a sense of humor about it because we are in bizarre world. We are in it, 4-dimensional, crazy land. And so I love being with people that have that beautiful balance between humor and seriousness, between left and right brain, and most of all, just grounded earth beings who are trying to figure out their galactic heritage, or perhaps their galactic departure zone. I don't know, but we'll certainly talk about it here. So thank you for tuning in to Beyond the Matrix. So, okay, so I have Kiara and his background. You know, I mean, I've been on their show several times, and we've been guided in extraordinarily deep meditations with Kiara. He's a world traveler like me, seeker of sacred wisdom, sacred sites. Do you want to add anything to that, Kiara, before I go on to David?
Just a lover of life.
Lover of life. I love it. Lover of one of the earth keepers. And how about you, David? What do I say about you? You know, you're an enigma to me. You're a mysterious one. From the point of view that, you know, I know that you're calling in the ascended masters and working on those very high levels, and yet you're a techno guy. You're an all about wonderful spiritual being and kind of a sharp cookie. What do you have to say about what you do and who you are today?
Well, it's more than I deserve. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of an entrepreneur.
Add humble, because that is the most beautiful quality that both of you possess. Go for it.
Yeah, no, I follow in Kiara's lead. I just I record him and study him, and then I get somewhere where I need to go. But no, I mean, I grew up. I'm a former athlete. I turned into an entrepreneur as a result of that from my dad's path, and sort of failed forward in business and had some successes and failures over the years for probably a couple of decades, and then sort of landed squarely into some very challenging times, and they pushed me to my awakening, really, which essentially began in 2010, 2009. And I have a military background from my family. My dad was British intelligence, and it goes sort of back like that. And to sort of cut into the Coles notes of it, 2017, this was right after the 16+1 operation sort of came online visibly. I decided to leave the companies that I was running at the time. There was 2 of them, and I talk about my boardroom moment where I walk into the boardrooms of those companies, proverbially actually more than anything else, and said, right, guys, I'm out. I'm joining the front line of the Great Awakening because I can't put this off anymore. And that's what Spirit will do. I'm sure we'll get into it. Spirit will just continue to nudge you or grab a shovel and physically move you.
Or slam you over the head with it.
and smash you around the face and all the rest and in between, and we'll set you back on course. No matter if it's your time to awaken, no matter what you do, you'll always get corrected. So anyway, that began in 2017. Above Duality was launched. I interviewed Kiara, I think in 2020, as a mutual friend introduced us. And what a sage he is, Kiara, my goodness. And we knew straight after that interview that we had to collaborate in some way, and we're doing lots of other things other than the Age of Pandora podcast. But that was born in 2020, and I don't know how many shows we've done now. A lot. Patricia, you've obviously been on with us a couple of times at least, more than a couple of times now.
More than a couple, yeah.
Yeah, and we just
we've probably done about 50 shows by now.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I think when I did the first interview with you, you were kind of just beginning, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was close. Yeah. I'm not sure.
Well, you were one of my prime targets.
Oh, what an honor that is! Thank you, sweetheart. All right, well, let's get into it. I've been talking about this, I'm pretty sure you have too, and that is the bantering, the constant juxtaposition between the dark hats, the light hats. People even refer to the gray hats. That's a safe place to be. But inevitably, what we're talking about is the ongoing battle of darkness and light. And we have many dimensions and layers of this conversation. People are so befuddled, they don't know what to believe. They're getting exhausted from being jockeyed back and forward. The bit of news that looks like the white hats are speaking, the deluge of black hat activity, to say the least, and disinformation, and oh my God, people are getting exhausted. So I look to you as fellow grounded spiritualists to bring up this topic and slam right into it and hit it in the face. And that is, what are we doing? Where are we going with this black hat, white hat, the black military, the white military? What is going on? And, is it going on? Or are we in this false illusionary state where we believe any minute now this is going to happen because we're told big letter, our favorite letter keeps telling us that just hold on, it's happening. The military are in control. You don't have to worry. The white hats have got it. And meanwhile, the black hats keep tearing at the fiber, not only of American civilization, but of course, its reflection on the entire planet. So I'd love let's kick off with you, Kiara, your viewpoints on what the hell is going down on planet Earth.
Wow. Well, it's such an exciting time, isn't it? And,
that's one adjective.
Despite everything, despite all the conflicts and all the craziness and despair that people are going through, this is the most exciting time we could choose to be born in. And I think it's because of this pendulum swing between the dark and the light. It's not an accident. If you're looking to create something that hasn't been created before, if you're looking to evolve in a way that we've not seen yet, we have to go deep into the darkness as a womb of new creation. So I think that's the definition that we need to move towards. The darkness is not something to be in conflict with. It's not something that necessarily has to be overcome, but it's something that is a birthing place for something that's arriving, which isn't here yet. And until it's here, we won't be able to see the full spectrum of what that means. So it's not that there's not this, continual yo-yo between the deep state and the alliance and whatever names we give this. It's not that we're not suffering on some human level in the midst of all the chaos that's being created. But this has been going on for thousands of years. And I think we need to recognize that it's not new for us here. And we also need to recognize that this time around, it's not just going around this treadmill. It's actually breaking through. So the image that comes to mind is, in the old days when they had these big, giant wrecking balls to break down old buildings, You'd swing it from one side to the other, back and forth, until you gathered enough momentum to swing it all the way over to break down the walls. And then something new could be built from a new foundation. So when Patricia, when you sent that theme, black hat, white hat, it was so exciting just to hear those two words, because we can look at this from so many different angles. So yes, on one angle, we have this field of duality that we're struggling within. We're facing this every day. We're responding in ways that we never imagined. And on the other hand, we're also looking at this from a perspective where there's the rishis, the sapta rishis, the lords of time, the ascended masters, the nath yogis, the lords of amenti. These are beings that have been involved in Earth's evolution for forever. And they're working with humanity, they're working behind the scenes, they're working to uplift consciousness. But even as the Alliance has been saying, I think this is not something that we can predict with great certainty how it's going to proceed, because there's always the uncertainties. So if you look at uncertainty as black hats, we know where we're going. That is certain for me. I know that where we're going is going to be an incredible new planet of immense light and beauty and joy and creativeness and power. Right now, we're just about to break through. And there's a friend of mine who was talking about how she's lately been experiencing herself as part of Gaia, as part of Mother Earth, as part of this journey. And it's like entering into the womb, but also realizing that in the last cycle, the Earth was not able to ascend because there was not enough to break through. There was not enough resistance to break through. And this is a principle that we haven't quite grasped. What this means in practical terms is that the darkness, or the black hats, are a tool for greater ascension. So unless we have that resistance to combat, it doesn't bring out enough of the light within us. We tend to be lazy. We tend to be just lazy. I'm lazy.
Well,
I'm probably the laziest person around. So,
when we have the chicken in the pot scenario where everything is just okay, which we've enjoyed in the past, we keep talking about the way things were. And in certain cultures, because we can't certainly say that the entire planet has had a peaceful time of it, but in certain Western cultures, it's been a pretty easy ride between wars. And now we've got this draconian global crackdown. And the Syrian High Council have always said, it's got to get bad enough. You've got to be up against the wall before you move. Because until then, why do you need to? Everybody's kind of okay. Have a beer, relax. And so the question I guess I want to ask you, and then I'd like to pose it to David also, is how bad do you think it's got to get? Because pretty bad. And so while people are using expressions like it's exciting, and you said it's an exciting moment, and I think that a lot of people that are listening are thinking, really? I don't think so. It's painful, it's horrible, it's unbearable. Where do you get exciting? And so I'd love to help people understand what we mean by that, what we are feeling, and how our perception of this traumatic, horrible experience is the, as you said, the resistance that we need to break out of the cage and blow this thing wide open and start to soar. So can you comment on that?
Well, that's an amazing question there. So David, go ahead, and then I'll come back
to
this.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks for that. I was wanting to draw from your wisdoms. I mean, yeah, brilliantly said, Kiara. You know, I was opening my first wife's notebook. I've got so many notebooks now with stuff that I do and study and what have you, sometimes teach. And this post-it note came out, The Dance of Connection. You can't see that on the screen. It says The Dance of Connection. Like a tarot card falling out of the deck. I'm like, okay, that was right before the show. And this is really what it's about for me. Is it's about the dance of connection. Now, the beautiful thing is that the uniqueness of this dance that we're living, the human experience right now today, it only requires 2 feet. So this dance of connection requires 2 feet, yet it can impact the whole world. So when we look at things from the ground level, all right, when we look at things from, oh, Mr. T did that, DJ T did that, or now Mr. JB is doing that, ruining things. Here up in Canada and Western Canada, we have some, I mean, just an absolute pantomime with what's going on. You've got to, and this is more maybe for the awakened people watching this, you've got to bring this dance into the turmoil, because if you don't, you get full value of what the pain is, right? It's kind of like The Journey of Entrepreneurship, which is the roller coaster. There's a wonderful book by Darren Hardy. I had numerous copies and I used to give them out at seminars and we used to teach this stuff. But this is the roller coaster ride of ascension. And there are going to be, for a little bit longer until we really get to that higher vibrational place, there's going to be some times when we do feel absolutely SHIT, really, really crap, right? We look at what's going on in the news. We look at what's going on with the mandated V and the V passports, etc. And we think, holy crap, like this stuff is really in your face and it's really nasty. But to answer the question of how bad it's going to get, I think we're scratching the surface. I don't think we're anywhere near the epicenter yet. And I don't mean that to scare people. I don't mean that to put people in states of anxiety. But I do want people to be aware that the galactic picture is the ET races that have been the controlling factions on the planet. Now, whether the Draco overlords are still here or not, I don't know. But the reptilians and the greys and the insectoids and the invader races, who have different agendas, by the way, some of them work together, are still very much in control of the planet. And how much in control? Probably less than they were 50 years ago, but they're still very much in control. So when you look at the Alliance's plan, the White House's plan, all the great stuff they're doing with the children, we know about the wonderful stuff that's going on there, supposedly. And I think a lot of that's true to a large degree, is that there is no way that there is going to be this rapture moment that DJT comes back, the EBS goes on, and humanity is told for 8 hours a day, kind of like what David Wilcott was saying, which is the information they were probably given by whatever contacts they had, that humanity was going to wake up. Well, what about the reptilians and the greys and all the ET races that are actually controlling things? It doesn't matter whether you get rid of the humans, right? That's a very small part of the puzzle, an important part. It needs to be done. It's being done. But what's really going on right now is the treaties that are being re-ratified, attempted to be being re-ratified, the agreements that are trying to be made with the real controllers of planet Earth. Now, they're not just going to leave. They're not going to leave and call in on account of rain. They've been controlling the planet for thousands of years. And we are, the Earth human genome is part of their manipulated experiment of control. Now, that's not why we were brought here originally, but it is how we've been manipulated. So that piece is going to take a long, long time. And Gaia is going to help with that as she transitions. But that's going to take a long time to work out. So even if DJT came on tomorrow and announced that everything was being done, I can tell you it hasn't, because this group and these groups that are really in control of Earth are going to be here for a while. And so I would expect this to go to a point where the sleeping masses, remember, Patricia, I sent you that Ascension funnel diagram. There's a huge portion of humanity right now, probably about 65%, maybe 70, who are still very much asleep. Got no idea what's going on with the galactic picture, what I've just mentioned, and they're quite happy to still be governed. Now, we need to wake up about a third of that group before we really can get a movement going on Earth where the people take back a form of control. Now, in order for them to get there, they're going to need to face the waterfall. Right? We talk about in entrepreneurship, the waterfall moment. And you make a major change in your life when two things happen. One, you have a game-changing relationship that comes into your life, right? Whether it's, Patricia knocks on my door and goes, I'm the Mooney you've been waiting for. I'm the Jella, and I have a moment, right? Or Kiara. And the second thing is we have a waterfall moment, which is where most people go. I know I do, which is they have an emotional crash, a spiritual crash, a financial crash, a relational crash, whatever it will be, and they go over the falls. Now, where will humanity stop and put the stick in the river and stop going over the falls? I don't know. I think a lot of people have got to go over. So we're talking about a lot more people dying from this mandatory V. Death is an illusion, physically transitioning into the non-physical. We're talking about some more crazy, ridiculous draconian measures that will come in probably in a country near you soon. And we're looking at a lot more confusion as people enter into another state of awakening. Cori talks about sort of the end time madness, but as they awaken to higher DNA activation, having to deal with that, right? Having to deal with cross parallel life thoughts, higher consciousness thoughts coming in, telepathy, all this stuff. So we're nowhere near that point yet. Now, that's some of the stuff to come. I say it's stuff to look forward to because I've been through some interesting stuff in my life that's allowed me to build up that quotient of adversity quotient. And if you haven't done that yet, then that's okay. You can start today. But yeah, there's some more very difficult stuff coming, I think.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to play the devil's advocate, and that, of course, is a pun intended. Let's say we have the body of the 75%, which is closer to the percentage that I think, but who's counting, of the unawakened. And let's say they do awaken. What is your perception of so great? So now you've got 75% of people awake and aware that reptilians and Dracos and the insectoids have got their claw on the planet. So, okay, so now we're awake. And we, as you said, that doesn't mean they're going to just say, oh, well, let's give them back the planet, little humanoids. So what do we do with 75% of a planetary body that is well aware of it now? But compared to what the tools, again, I'm playing the devil's advocates here, okay? The tools that they have against humanity, how do we override that imprint, that claw, that clutch, not only upon the planetary soul, but also upon every living being, not only the humans.
Yeah.
We always talk about this the human race, but being a lover of all living beings, I'm thinking about how they're destroying the plant community, how they're destroying the animal community. And so we've got to speak for them, because although we kind of think we're the most intelligent species on the planet, actually, I would argue that point, but I don't want to be that much of a devil's advocate. So my question, and I put it out to either one of you, is great. Love the concept that we wake up the 70% that are sleeping. And then what? Then what? What does this percentage of people do with the reality of ETs that you've talked about that have got their grip on the planet? Gary,
okay, well, let me address this from a different perspective.
Great.
So for me, what's helpful, in terms of looking for hope, is expanding perspective. So I can see the same story, the same picture from a different perspective, and that inspires me very differently. So from the human perspective, from the third dimensional perspective, duality, dark and light, it's pretty shitty. As David has been very vocally expressing. And that, it's like shit happens, this is the story, this is the journey. It's an initiation. So if you can look at it in terms of an initiation, what is an initiation? It is where the visible and the invisible come together in a way that's different from what we imagine. So what we are experiencing on the visible is very different from what may be happening on the invisible. And human senses are designed to basically look at the visible. And so the rational mind is basically, trying to battle it out in a contest in a struggle, in a war between the dark and the light. Meanwhile, there's something else going on. There's an initiation taking place. The vibrational frequency of the entire planet has already changed, has already shifted, and is about to shift far more than we can even imagine. And I've done a pretty extensive study on cosmic cycles, galactic cycles, solar cycles, planetary cycles, and how that affects the magnetic fields of the Earth. And all life on Earth is connected to these magnetic fields. Our subtle bodies, as well as our physical bodies, are connected to these magnetic fields. Our interrelationship with each other and with other dimensions is through these magnetic fields. And what's happening is that the magnetic field of the Earth is very rapidly at this time changing. It's changing polarity, which means that it's activating connections between our physical bodies and our subtle bodies and our causal bodies and infinite source in a way that hasn't been seen before, and is just as traumatic as it is for a caterpillar entering into a cocoon, losing its old identity, wondering whether it's going to make it through, examining the process of death and dying. And then, when it least expects it, emerging as a butterfly. So that butterfly consciousness is built in. You know, it bypasses the rational human aspects of the personal self. And so all of this is an initiation, moving us from that outer rational perception of life into becoming absolute creators of a new reality. So what's needing to happen in this shift, so what this initiation is about, is the shift from our identification with the personal self into an identification with the universal self. And this is not easy, and not everybody will go through this or will be able to even acknowledge that this is happening. But this is what this whole war is actually about in my seeing. It's about forcing humanity and the rest of life on this planet to actually move past a very limited perception of what is possible into infinite possibilities. But that only happens when we are forced to confront our mortality, forced to confront our limitations, forced to confront our humanity, and then enter consciously into this cauldron of life. This is what alchemy is to me. You know, so when the medieval mystics talked about alchemy and transforming lead into gold, it's not lead into gold as material objects, it's consciousness, heavy energies into light energies. And that's why I call it exciting, because obviously, it's, you know, I'd rather be, you know, in a beautiful forest environment where I could be with other people doing the same things in absolute peace and harmony. But what we're facing now is not just a personal level, but a collective shift, a planetary shift, not just human, but like you were saying, Patricia, every species on this earth is going through radical transformation and rebirth. So in the past cycles, what's been happening? So every 12,000 years or so, there's this magnetic excursion or reversal, where the poles shift in relationship to each other. And as that happens, there's been extinction level events on this earth, multiple times where everything got wiped out and Gaia started again. So it's not that we can't go through this before, but do we need to go through this? That's the question for me.
That is the question.
So in my mind, this is, okay, Sri Aurobindo is one of my teachers, and absolute favorites, says we're entering into the 7th cycle of the universe. In previous cycles, we've gone through ups and downs. We have built up and collapsed. We have created and then been destroyed. So there's always been these ups and downs of these cycles of civilization, these cycles of creation. This particular cycle, he says, will not be the same. There's been enough momentum built up from this source level that we're actually going to break through into something that's not been seen ever before in material creation. And what this requires is that we are able to enter into what he calls the inconscient. So this is the deep darkness of the heart of matter. Entering into it consciously and then breaking through it in a way that we discover ourselves as who we are. We experience that creator consciousness within bodies of matter. We experience a divinity within our humanity. We discover heaven upon earth. And that's not easy, that's what this whole journey is about.
Yeah.
That's why it seems so hard. But this is a great initiation.
We have been talking about ascension for over a decade now, and people have still the illusion that it's just one moment's going to happen. There's going to be a rapture event. You're going to float away into some dimensional consciousness state where everything is perfect and beautiful. And like you said, we need that catalyst, that resistance aspect that is the source of the awakening. It's the confrontation between matter and spirit, between dark and light, between black hats and white hats, which I would like to get back to that subject zone. But in the end, the ascension, we all understand, is the resolution of this extreme polarity. So what are we doing? We're in the extreme absolute of polarity.
Yeah.
We thought we were in polarity 10 years ago. Now we are just thrust into it and having to experience it because it is something we will, in fact, leave behind as we reach a state that we can describe as a density or another dimension. There are many terms being put on this state of consciousness, but in the end, it is the collective consciousness and the individual consciousness we're talking about here, rather than, the concept of the earth splitting in two, the Dolores Cannon model. I love the metaphorical aspect of that, but I've never been able to get my head around the idea that the earth, this being, but like you said, comes around and around again, will never be extinct unless they blow the planet up with nuclear holocaust. And then even then, these fragments of the earth would eventually evolve into other smaller planets, perhaps, and so on and so on.
That's not.
But
it's only true if you're looking at it from a physical perspective.
That's what I'm saying.
So when you're looking at
the
Gaia,
metaphorical model, the metaphysical model of that separation is what interests me. Not that people are putting out information about the actual physical. I don't believe in the good guy, bad guy scenario. So I don't believe in the black hat, white hat scenario. And I don't believe in the good earth, bad hat, the good earth, spiritual people, bad earth, not spiritual people model that people are tossing around, because we're not getting anywhere if we're still in our perception of ascension includes that kind of model, then we aren't. We're not getting anywhere, in my humble opinion.
Well, Patricia, before I don't want to take this away from David, but I want to say one quick thing. The model that is looking at the journey of ascension is based in duality. It's like, we're escaping from this experience of being less than, being limited, being fearful, being hurt, being betrayed, everything that we're dealing with in this physical material world by seeking after ascension. If we're identifying ourselves with source, with infinite consciousness, if that is who I am, it's not a journey of ascension, it's a journey of descension. And this is a journey that requires us to look at reality in terms of unity. So there's no opposition between dark and light. What appears to be dark is simply a shadow of greater light. And I think this is a paradigm shift. And maybe it's looking at both simultaneously, but it's like, which one do we identify with? Which aspect of us are we identifying with? And we are both. So we can't just talk about ascension. We can't just talk about descension. We can't just talk about humanity. We can't just talk about divinity. So that's part of the paradigm shift that I think we're making now. We've been too mired in the density of the personal self.
Mhm.
And this is what's forcing us now to break out of this density so we can shift our identity to what it always has been. It's not like we're becoming something new. We've always been that source. We just haven't experienced that in this dimension, in this physical world, in this physical body yet. And that's the challenge, and that's the ultimate privilege that we've been given at this time.
So, in your understanding, darkness is just the shadow the shadow of light. You said shadow of
From
light.
that perspective, yeah.
So
I'm not denying the other perspective. That human perspective is also really important, and we don't deny that by
because
sticking our heads into the sand.
I don't think that in our metaphysical conversations we can embrace the idea solely that everything is a reflection of light or an absence of light, or I mean, do we not acknowledge evil? Do we not acknowledge evil intent? Do we not acknowledge the intention of bringing energy to the ultimate black hole of consciousness? And rather than glorifying it and saying, "Oh well, everything is light, and it's just a shadow of the light," boy, I have a problem with that, because there is some evil at work here, and it seems like we're almost afraid to utter that word, evil. But man, there is some evil going down on planet Earth. Can you address that, David?
Yeah, great conversation. Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, someone asked me yesterday, well, what happens when DJT comes back and
Right.
the white hats are in power? And I said, well, it's Matrix Part 2. It's the second part of the Matrix.
Yeah.
No, we're not staying there. We're going somewhere else. But that's really as I see it. And it's just another version of control. Now, will that change to more power to the people? I don't know. I'm not seeing too much talk of it, but we'll see. I'm hopeful for that on planet Earth here. But I think, it's so important to remember where we're going. And there is this dance, like I talk about, between doing and being. And we talk about this on AOP every week. And the thing for me is to understand exactly what Kiara is talking about. Two things: understand where we're going and what our mission is. Some of us have a mission. Some of us have less of a realization of a mission. And there's no end point. There's just mile markers on this wonderful journey. And what changes, what is a game changer, is when you start to get on a path to learning about who you really are. So when Kiara did this deep dive on where the human genome came from, I know we've talked about this as well, Patricia, way back before Atlantis, the human genome was brought here to be an example in the galaxy, in existence, for the creator of the human vessel with that 12-stranded and probably beyond activation of DNA to bring incredible light and prosperity, abundance, God to the galaxy, wherever we chose to be. To
that
better
resonates with the Syrian material.
Right, exactly. And when you start to understand that, you see things like Kiara says from a different perspective. And when we talk about dark and light, yes, we are in a density when the duality exists right now. But I do see, let's just say we had this liberation event, Matrix Part 2, all right? You're still going to have black hats and white hats in a chunk of existence. However, You get to choose. Like, I agree with you, Patricia. There is no restriction on the soul. Now, we won't get into that conversation today, but remembering who you are, when you remember who you are and you step on, as Kiara talks about, the path of initiation, which is what we're being asked to do right now, people who are understanding this stuff, and not we're any better or worse, but we're more awakened to it, we remember it more. You're being asked to awaken to your genius. You're being asked to remember who you are. Now, when you get on that path, you start to understand things different. Different stuff happens. Magic starts happening. You start teleporting stuff. You start traveling without having to get in a car or a plane or on your feet. All this stuff we know. You start having contact with some of the ultras, right? Some of the higher beings, all this stuff. And you start to get a different perspective on reality. So when I talk about the Matrix Part 2, there is going to be a layer of people who I call the Ascension architects. I know I've mentioned this to both of you. This is how I see it, where we will go off and continue to activate DNA-wise from a conscious connection, that dance of connection, from an alignment to source, to God, the soul-infused 12-stranded human being. That will be quite a small layer of humanity. Now, when that begins to shift and break away, which it kind of is right now, it's been happening since sort of 2012 and will continue on for a while, we will play off the three trifectas of consciousness evolution right now, of energy on the planet. We've talked about some of them, which is our galactic GPS point. Where we are in the galaxy is extremely high level of energy for these ascension and DNA activations. Number 2 is the solar cycle that we're going through as we enter the grand solar minimum. Kiara talks about this at length, very, very professionally, expertly. So we're getting so much more energy radiation through the weakened magnetosphere of the Earth and other reasons. And the third thing is we're waking each other up, right? Our collective consciousness is boosting our own DNA. So we've got those three things which are taking that portion of humanity up. Now, with Matrix Part 2, this is kind of the way that I see it, and it may happen a different way. I think, and I've had a lot of visions on this, we will get the opportunity to come back in and, like the Matrix, we will be able to come back in and wake people up and take them with us and get them on the path of initiation. But we can't truly physically, most powerfully do that until we start walking that path ourselves. And actually a lot of that will happen organically because they'll start to have their awakening, right? And they can come and join us. And although they can't in a sort of a restrictive way, but that's this movement, this ascension wave and path that we're on right now. Now, in that journey, there is a portion of humanity who are not ready for any of this stuff, who are not ready to let go of their wife, their kids, the money, the Matrix, and that's totally fine. They're not lesser because of that. But there's going to have to become a time very soon when they make a choice to stay in Matrix Part 2 or continue on with the Ascension architects. So I don't know how that's going to look, Patricia, whether that's going to be a parallel type Earth, whether it's going to be a different planet. I know you and I have talked about this. I don't really know how that's going to look, but I do think that's the play. That's how it's going to play out. And it is important to look at things from both those perspectives, to have compassion for those who are not yet ready to walk that path and see the troubles they're going through, and to give love and to offer love and light wherever we can, to shine it into darkness wherever we can. And at the same time, continue on the activation path by looking at things from the God within us perspective as initiates of DNA activation and 12-stranded Christed individuals. So there's going to be a play, there's going to be a dance, but there's going to come a time where we literally, and there's many of us on the planet right now, I'm not one of them, but there's many of the ascended souls here on Earth and ascended masters in human form, some of them, who can literally walk into the darkness and they can transform it, right? Like I said last night with Valentea, it's not about making your table shorter. It's about making the vibration of your table so strong and so bright and lengthening that table, and the darkness literally won't be able to come in. So this is sort of where we're going, and it doesn't put play to ignoring the darkness. It puts play to awakening to your genius, so you can actually invite the darkness in. Doesn't matter, we're God within. Come and have the devil's there. Come and have a seat at the table. Let's break some bread. Let's grab some wine. Come and let's chat about the dark and the light. And that's when you get to that place of Christed states, which is where that layer of humanity is going and where we A large portion of us will go over time. Initially, not so much. But when you get to that state, there's no darkness that's going to worry or scare you. But it's going to be a process. It's going to be a transition. There's going to be in physical reality a lot of people dying. If you want to look at death that way, there's going to be a lot of people dying from this V, from continued activities, from manipulation from the dark side. It's just going to happen. And the more you resist that, I think the more challenging it will be. But at the same time, we have to recognize it and know that we are also here to give compassion to people who are in that side of things. So I guess that's more of a rounded piece of the conversation that I wanted to throw in.
Yeah. Well, it's a very tricky question.
I don't believe that there are ascended masters in body. I don't buy that at all. And I know that that might be in contrast to a lot of people's opinions, but the mere idea that they're ascended to me means they're not in body. But that's just a semantic point. There are some wonderful masters on this planet, but I just don't buy into the idea that there are ascended masters walking around amongst us. Anyway, right, okay. What about the children? Because this is a wonderful discussion that we're having, and the individual progression of the soul, our awakening others, their soul journey is all wonderful. But what about what's happening to the children and their cages? And not only the caged children who are being sacrificed, but the children in schools with their masks and their plastic visors and their containers, and this dark agenda of. Yesterday I read where these boys in a school had to come to the girls and apologize for being boys. They're not allowed to use the word anyway, but they had to apologize for being born male. This indoctrination of the children. And we know that there are a lot of highly evolved children coming in at the moment. And that is part of the ascension of the planet as well as the species. But what comes of these children? Where do you put this, Kiara, in the bigger scheme of what we're talking about? What chance do these children have to have a life? Where do they fit in the scheme of of what we're talking about?
Patricia, when you talk about evil, this is evil.
It is.
And it's not something that can be ignored in any way. So what I was offering was a perspective which is simultaneous, but not something to ignore or deny this. When I worked as a psychotherapist in California, I worked specifically with survivors of satanic abuse and with all kinds of depravity, including CIA mind control, that most people cannot even wrap their minds around. The amount of depravity, of evil there is in this world, and what children have to go through.
Excuse me for interrupting you, because I really want to get this point across. We know how horrific the satanic stuff is, and I don't think we need to go into it. But I'm talking about the everyday practice that they're doing to children now, where they can't, they've got to sit in a hula hoop 6 feet from the other child, can't talk, can't laugh, can't sing, can't touch. And the terror, the seeing these children masked and not breathing for 8 hours a day. And a lot of times at home, they're not allowed to be without the mask either. Right. And this mantra that that they're unworthy, that they've got to be asking for forgiveness for being white, black, green, yellow, male, female, fluid, everything. This dogma, this indoctrination of the children. Right. I wonder, I'd love your...
Well, I think that's where, remember in the last conversation we had, you spoke about being the mother bear. And really, standing up for the children, protecting the children who don't have a voice of their own. Who are the ones who can stand up for them, if not us? And so it's like, yes, we are warriors. And that's something that we tend to minimize sometimes on a spiritual path. it's easier to talk about alchemists. It's easier to talk about ascension. It's easier to talk about, soul frequency and so on. But here we are also on this earth as warriors.
Exactly.
And what does that mean to be a warrior? It means to stay in your truth, to be clear, to be able to see things clearly, and then make a choice based on what's right, what comes through. And it takes a certain amount of courage. And I think what's been happening with all this masking and everything else that goes with it, and also the mind control that goes with it, is that people have lost that warrior spirit. It's like, yes, they tell us what to do, and so we do it.
Yep.
We don't necessarily agree with it, but we don't fight back because, and it's just like that story back in Nazi Germany. They came for the Jews, but I wasn't a Jew, so I didn't stand up. And then they came for the Christians, but I wasn't a Christian, and so I didn't say anything. And so on and so on. And by the time they came for me, there was no one left to defend me. So that's where we need to really grow up as warriors. And what does that mean? And it doesn't necessarily mean violence. Sometimes people equate the two. But it means a certain level of coherence within ourselves. It's like
Well,
if we're guided.
It really means being white hats. So they're not, this term is not just to the military alone.
Right.
But when I think of white hats, I think of doers of good, bringers of light. And, so when you say we have to be warriors, we are. And we are white hats in our way. And again, my question is, what will happen to these children when you've got parents that are giving their children to this doctrine, enforcing it?
Well, and then you look at what's happening on the border of the United States, with so many children coming in who end up becoming trafficked. And nobody talks about that. I first began to study David Icke about 30 years ago. And, it really opens your eyes. And a lot of people go around with their eyes wide shut because it's too painful. There's too much cognitive dissonance. And so it's easier to remain in the comfort of your ignorance. And that's not what we're talking about. What I'm talking about is, yes, being a warrior, being aware, being present, and at the same time being an alchemist.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can be an alchemist and a warrior at the same time, what would that look like? I think that's like a new paradigm which we need to explore some more.
Well, we better hurry up.
Well, we are doing it.
Let's hurry.
I think this conversation
like
is
such a, you guys are talking in very etheric terms, and I'm fighting here to bring the conversation to the more 3D consciousness reality because we're faced with it. And in my own spiritual practice, I don't feel the confines of this reality. I'm in a blissful state in my own personal reality. But watching the world and knowing that the audience that's listening today, a lot of people are getting desperate. They're afraid. And it's more, watching the society. I don't know if I can put language to what I'm trying to convey here. Worrying. Take out worrying. Awareness of the reality that's unfolding around us and how you're going to cope with that 3D framework. And my question is bigger. It's what happens to the next generation? Let's say we as individuals, we acclimatize, rise above, find the power in the experience that we're facing. But I just wonder, what is the generation of children that are going through this? What does their future look like? Because the perpetuation, they're talking about 10 years of the masks now, okay? It's never, why would it
Oh,
stop? Yeah, that's the new thing. 10 years, and some British health official said this could go on for 10 years. And I thought, well, why wouldn't it? It's obedience 101A. And regardless, and I hope I'm making sense here, of our personal spiritual alchemy, I wonder, what about the children? What will happen? Aside from the millions of children that are tortured, what will happen to them? We know. But what about the other children that are sitting? I mean, I'm counseling someone right now who is a teacher, and I must not say the country because I don't want to give away her privacy, where the children are masked, they're separated. She can't work with them because there's no contact, there's no connection, there's no breath, no prana. How long? A year later, how many more years are the children going to be prana-less creatures, robotically sitting there, knowing that, believing that the next guy can infect them and kill them? How do we break this spell on the children? Am I clear? Because I hope yeah. Can you give some?
I think it's quite important to remember as we dive into this very difficult topic, which none of us here can truly fathom at the depth unless we experience it with our own kids, or even as kids going through this satanic system, the ones that have, I mean. But we can offer perspective, certainly, and certainly compassion. But it's so important to look at things from what the soul has agreed to go through before they come into physical vessel.
Good point.
Right now, a lot of these souls that are coming in and are going through, and we see this from the 3D level, which is horrendously bloody awful. I totally agree. But they've agreed, as we know, to come in with contracts, with the parents, with this system. And many of them are going to turn the lights on and bust the system. You know, as Barbara Masiniak says, they're systems busters. They're going to be the lights. It takes one candle to light 1,000 candles. So when you talk about the warriors, I think you're going to see them. You're going to see them. Now, yes, it's not the kids, it's the parents that's the problem. And I'm not pointing the finger at parents. You do the best you can, as I do. But there needs to be, in this trauma healing journey that we're on in the Matrix right now, which is, and we talked about this last night, humanity is being forced to heal the inner child. And we talked about the second chakra a lot last night. We're being forced to heal the inner child right now, which is things that we didn't heal as children, right? Which means we get told when we're supposed to line up, we get told when we have freedom, we get told when we can eat food, we get told when we can speak in class, we get conditioned to not question authority. All this stuff begins right from early on, right? Through our parents, through the school system, into employment. So that's the system, we know that. So this needs to continue to happen to be revealed, right? Healing trauma is what? Kiara, you're gonna know this better than I am, but I've healed my own. It's first of all, you gotta be aware of it, be aware of what you've gone through, and be accepting that this is trauma, right? Secondly, you gotta face it so you can heal it. Now we're in that period right now where we're recognizing the trauma, and we're about to, we kind of are in this place too. We're being faced with looking at what the leaders on the dark side want to do, right? This is what they want. They want this to be the reality for the control mechanism. So humanity gets to make this choice to say, okay, well, I'm happy to go along with that. Or, holy shit, no way, we're going, this is happening in Canada right now. Private groups are being formed, common law groups, and school boards are being put on notice for this kind of stuff. There's some, I can send you some links. This is happening right now. So groups of warriors, Chris Guy is one in Canada. Look at his interview on Patriot Street Fighter last night. Holy shit, that's an interview and a half. I couldn't sleep. And I downloaded it because it's been taken off. But the warriors, the candles are being lit all around the world right now. And you're about to see this sort of, this explosion of just say no, of no way, we're not taking this. But there's going to be a portion of people who are like, you guys are crazy. And they're not going to wake up right now. And that's totally fine. They're playing their part.
And a lot of them are going to die. Let's be honest.
They are. They're going to die, and they're going to be held in the lower vibrational part of the third density for a while. This is probably one of the agreements that the white hats are having to make with the reptilians. Okay, you can keep back a portion if we can build the new earth. Now, I don't know that for sure, but I get that feeling. So yes, there is going to continue to be a lot of suffering, but don't forget they've agreed to come in and do that. Now, for the ones that want to wake up, we can go in like Neo. We did that show a couple of weeks ago, Kiara, Becoming Neo, where we can go into the matrix and we can liberate those who are ready to be liberated. And kind of like ETs, when they come over and they connect with our DNA and consciousness, and they come and visit us or activate us, we will be able to sense and feel and see them from the place that we're at to go and help them activate. So this cycle that we're on is going to have a lot of darkness, and it's going to have a lot of evil.
It does. It certainly does.
Yeah, it's very difficult. But the way we play with it is we play with the not running away from it by facing it, by being the warriors, but remembering who we are to balance off those energies so we can continue to grow and then help them come through. But it's going to be a tough time, guys. There is going to be a lot of child abuse. There's going to be a lot of revelations of child abuse, and it's going to continue for a little bit longer. And we just got to be as compassionate and as present as we can for those going through it.
Thank you. That's a very profound observation. I'd like to add something here, and that is, okay, I personally believe, and I like to preface things not by saying this is the way things are, but this is the way I perceive it, okay? I personally perceive that the big step for us to get to that place you're talking about is to let go of the white hat concept, to finally accept the fact that, number one, it was a nice ride. Personally, I had a great ride. I saw a man that I thought, we've got a leader here. And reading his energy, feeling his truth, something happened. I don't know if he's a clone now or if it's a mind control, but that man is not this man, in my humble opinion, okay? It was a nice ride. And perhaps, and I got a feeling Kiara will agree with this, perhaps he served to help us understand to stop looking for a savior. Not that I ever saw the man as a savior, but that many people did and still do. It's like any day now, oh, tomorrow, guess what? The white hats are coming. It's okay, it's under control, it's part of the plan. And you know, the days go by, the dates don't happen, and people keep coming up with excuses because they don't want to let go of that dream.
Right.
And it was dreamlike. When T appeared on the scene, and I went, well, and underneath the, or say above the nonsense, because he did a lot of silliness up front. And I said to myself, well, this is definitely interesting, misleading the antagonists that his level is this high, and you know, attacking the orange man and all this stuff while he was working up here. I saw that. Nobody will ever take that away from me. But I don't see it anymore. I see him here now. Yesterday, he came out with this blast about how Birx and Fauci were horrible and all of this rhetoric, childish, immature rhetoric. And I thought, this is not the same man. And perhaps what we're experiencing with this whole phenomenon is that, no, get over the idea of a savior of any kind and look at it. Look at the white hat, black hat dichotomy and recognize that you're doing it again. There you go again. Is there really, and that's why I had you guys on the show, do you think there really is a white hat military and a black hat military? That certainly is the rap with most of the truthers out there. And some people are clinging to this belief desperately. It's any minute now, I'm telling you, it's coming. Yawn. It's not real. That part isn't real. This is the, you know what? Definitely everything looks unreal. And it's starting to include the illusion that Mr. T is who we think he is, and that there is in fact a resurrection, a Christ-like resurrection about to occur. And so I guess I'd love to talk about that. Who wants to take it?
Go on, Kiara.
Well,
Yeah, your side, you take this one.
So going back to one of my favorite movies, Lord of the Rings, it's such a metaphor for this age. It's right in that moment of absolute despair, where nothing, seems salvageable anymore, that something happens. It's right when you're pushed against the wall as far as you could get, and then you fight back. And I think it's coming to that for many people. It's like they're being pushed to the wall over and over and over again, and they've been doing this for such a long time. It's like this whole slave conditioning that we've been under for it's not just this generation. It's not just since the lockdowns began. It's been in our human psyche for millennia. And if we are going to overcome this, if we are going to declare sovereignty, we have to be pushed against the wall far enough and strongly enough that there's no choice left. We cannot be sitting on the fence as we have.
But how does
and I
this
think
relate
it's
to my point about Mr. T?
Sorry?
But how does this relate what you're saying to my point about question and query
Well,
of Mr. T?
Yeah, sure. So I agree with what you were saying about Mr. T. It's like he was my hero.
Yeah.
Not savior, but hero.
Hero.
Because he represented,
Yeah.
it wasn't the man, it was the idea of
Exactly.
Mr. T. The white horse, the white knight on the white horse thing.
Yeah.
And
it's gone, isn't it? I mean, for some people, it's not gone. They're still, I'm sure that the comments on this conversation will be, how dare you say that Mr. T is no longer in charge? But I think that the heroic, and I've got to express this. What he gave us was the belief that there are still heroes, and that is what we need to find within the heroic self. He gave me that feeling. I believed in him, and I don't anymore. But what he gave us is that heroic, fighting, warrior belief that we can still. Perhaps that's what his purpose was, to get 100 million people awakened. I mean, look at Madrid. I don't know if you saw the pictures of Madrid yesterday. What? There were millions of people in the streets. And I just wonder.
And that's happening everywhere.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to say.
I think what we're going to see is a lot of heroes coming up.
With the loss of the man, Mr. T, no longer, to me, exuding that heroic energy to the point that I'm not even sure it's him anymore. But his legacy, the legacy of a Trump, is that you can stand up. You can stand up to it. And, when he said, I'll take the slings and arrows, he certainly did. And I guess what I'm trying to say is I still believe in that man. I'm still grateful to that energy. And I believe that his role was more galactic than we'll ever really understand, because his role in awakening the race, the species, the human race, is far bigger than what it appeared to be, what it would appear to be now, were he to come back, as David was saying, into the matrix. It would be anticlimactic in a way, wouldn't it? So he's back. Great. Okay. We're going to have the same old rap, the same old fight, the same old. No, I think that we can't go back to the same old. I think that his disappearing and possibly being cloned, I mean, I don't know if you want to go there, but I just don't believe that's him anymore. Leaves us in the ethos with an experience, beautifully said, of a hero. And that shines as a light within us, that you can be, you can say no, you can stand up, rise up. It's very exciting, in some ways more exciting than if the white hats come back and bring him back. And I really feel very strongly about this, and I hope you are communicating what I feel.
Well, look at Frodo and Sam and, you know,
Movie, man,
all
between
those
the books.
characters.
Now you're talking my language.
So it's like, you know, there's nothing they would rather do than be back in their hobbit world, smoking weed and just lazing in the sun. But when the moment came and they had to make a choice, that's when they discovered the hero within themselves.
Exactly.
And that's what it is for all of us. I think there's a whole new generation of heroes that's rising because of all this and despite all this.
And I think that heroic essence is in many ways 3D bound. And my attitude is bring it on. Yes, I love the idea of our individual and collective ascension. But in the meantime here, let's see the stuff of being human, of being three-dimensional physical beings. Bring it on. Let's see what we can do here. And, you know, I am a warrior built in. And
hashtag Orion War Vets. And many of us are here at this time. Yeah. And if you look at it, you look no further. We're going to go into movies again. I want to ask you a DJT question, or supposition, whatever it was you put forward, which I love. What are the most take the top 10 top grossing movies of all time. What are 80% of them? Well, they're Marvel movies. What's number one right now? Avengers Endgame. What does that say to you about the collective consciousness of people? They love and resonate with the hero and light winning theme. Okay, however that plays out in people's lives. Sure. So I think what you're going to see, you're seeing this right now. You're totally seeing this. Is why I said it's about to be the Mount Etna or the Vesuvius or the Kilimanjaro. It's about to erupt. And you're seeing private, I know personally people that are, Kiara, you and I talked about this, Patricia, you and I have talked about this. You're seeing private militia groups. You're seeing, Michael Jadko's talked about this. You're seeing people who are rising up to take down the system. And there are people who are not ready, as I said. Do I think DJT is coming back? No. Do I think the white hats are going to come in and stabilize the system? Potentially there'll be a little bit of that, maybe. Maybe the Great Reset will be part of their plan. I don't know. But it's like the initiate. When you stand and sit at the feet of the master, he says, I will guide you, but I will not do it for you. So we're all Frodo right now. And my message to people is, especially when people have got this adoration syndrome, which I talked about, you talked about, Patricia, the white knight syndrome still. No, they may be doing stuff behind the scenes. Now, I do believe they are. There's stuff going on. However, you're going to have to do most of it. You're the initiate here. If you want to live on the new earth and if you want to have freedom, you're going to have to do most of that. How does that make you feel? Well, I'm not up for that. Okay, well then be in Matrix 2.0. And that's where you're going to be until you're ready to either formulate around the heroes that are rising right now, the Chris Skies, the European marches. We had them in Canada, thousands a couple of weeks ago. They're happening all over. Yeah. Now, if you're ready to join that, that's going to be part of that middle chunk. Remember, I told you about the activists, the pactivists, the passive activists, and the activists. The activists are going to take down the system right now, and they're going to stabilize it. So to get to that place of stabilization, people are going to need to continue to rise up and do this and say no. And there's going to be some unrest, and we're going through it right now. Civil war, yeah, but I don't think the way that people will think it will be, sort of, bullets in the streets and stuff like that. That may happen in pockets, who knows, in some of these more third world infrastructure countries. But I can tell you, there is no going back. Even if DJT came back in, there's too many people with that warrior spirit rising, breaking down the old system to go back to anything what it was. Even if it was, okay, everything's fine, we're going back to work. There's a lot of people in this group who will say, actually, no, we don't want that. We want a complete reform. But the people are going to have to do it. And it's not going to be through one figure. Now, they will be catalysts, like you said, like DJT, whether he is the same man or not. He was a catalyst. And this wave now is gathering storm. So that's my message on that. I think that's the way we have to do it. It was always the way we had to do it. It has to be through humanity. And there'll be little ascended masters. There'll be the angelic realm. There'll be the ET groups that help us on this journey as we do it ourselves. But make no mistake, we're going to have to do it. And if you're sitting back expecting someone else to do it for you, like DJT or somebody else, I got news for you. That's not going to happen. It's going to have to be through you. But that's leadership, right? That's
Yeah.
leadership. That's maturity. That's
And I think
taking
that
ownership for your sovereignty.
I think that a lot of people that are still buying the dream have not thought it through. Aside from whether or not it's him or not, which I every day wonder, have not thought through the idea of, so what? So what if he comes back? The momentum is gone. It's gone. Yeah. So what if he comes back and he has this experience of being positioned as still being the president? The damage is done. The war that he fought and really looked like he lost. I mean, even though people say he was trying to. I mean, the rap is he had to show, let us see. Sorry, I'm really tongue tied here. How bad things are. We get it. We see it. Next. Mm. The bottom line is, I don't think that people recognize, or because as I called it, the Trump adoration syndrome. People are still thinking he'll come back and it'll be wonderful and that'll go away. And no. Think of it this way. It is much more powerful, and I think the three of us are in alignment here, that in some ways, I can hear the negative feedback, that he doesn't reappear, because like you said, it's Matrix 2, whereas we were given this pearl, this man, this hero. I mean, I get goosebumps. I'm getting goosebumps right now. And then it was taken away. And when he said they took it away from us, they took everything, my heart just collapsed, right? Mm. And from that moment on, I knew he was gone, really gone. Mm. But the dream lives on, but yes. It's taking a different form. And that is, like you said, the hero consciousness that we've been able to have imbued within us from the belief and the model of DJT is manifesting. It's bringing out the warrior. And it would be anticlimactic for him to reappear.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's engaged now. And by the way, to your comment of civil war, we're in a civil war. Like you said, it would look different. It does look different. People are slaying each other left and right. I mean, the anti-Asian thing in America, I don't even understand what that's about. I suppose it's because the Chinese virus is the reason for that. But nonetheless, the war is on. And my attitude is, okay, let it play out. Let's see what happens. Eventually, it will burn out. And what we're left with from the flames of purification is the next phase of our social interaction, our new world, the new earth.
Exactly. Well said. And I'm really certain that we cannot go back to anything. No. So that's a bit scary for people. So if you don't go back to normal, where do we go? Because people talk about the new normal, but the new normal is not human. It's basically AI and artificial intelligence that is here to control. So what is it that we are moving towards? And I think this is where we need to vision more clearly.
Absolutely.
To dare to walk where no one has gone before. And this is what Star Trek is all about. But to do it in a way that we stay connected with who we truly are. So you're talking about, yes, the children. If there's anything that the last 4 years is about that I feel absolutely positive about, is the rescue of children from the dumps, from the deep underground military bases, assuming that it isn't all a lie. But it seems that there is enough evidence for this. So if this was the lifeblood of the deep state, literally the lifeblood of the deep state,
literally.
And if that is being addressed, if that is being cancelled, then I think the power of the deep state and the forces behind that are also being cancelled. And so what we're going to see now as we move forward is, we're still seeing, this great Leviathan in its last throes of death. flinging its tendrils and its talons around to capture as many people, as many children still as possible. But I don't think it's going to sustain for very long. I think that, the story of what I was sharing with David when I was in South Africa. When I actually, I don't know if I've shared this with you, Patricia, but there was a time when I was confronted with a reptilian being. I was visiting Kreda Mutwa in South Africa. And there was a powerful transmutation process that took place. And what changed in me is, rather than confronting this being out of fear and giving my power over to him, I could remain in my own power, and we could exchange energies in a way that freed him from having to be, in an overbearing kind of control, manipulation.
Tell the whole story. Tell the story. It's a good story.
Well, shall I?
Yeah.
Do you have time? Okay.
We'll
All right. Okay, well, so, Kreda Mutwa. He's the Sangoma, he died just a couple of years ago in his 90s. So he was like a gatherer of wisdom from across Africa. And so about 7-8 years ago, I forget when it was, I'd visited him along with a friend of mine from Australia. And we had a really amazing conversation about all these different beings that he's come in contact with. He had pictures, paintings of all these galactic races that he had been personally in touch with, including this reptilian fellow. And I looked at the painting, and it wasn't the reptilian beings that we normally associate with reptilian. It was kind of a golden hue of golden-hued scaly character. And he seemed to be an overlord, like one of the controllers of the reptilian species. And so he was showing me that, and he was telling me stories. That evening what started to happen, even before I left him to go back to my hotel room, I started to go into this fever. My body started to burn. By the time I got to my room, I was just in an incredible state where I felt like I was going to drop my body in an instant. I could not survive the intensity of that heat, that pain, and the force that was coming through. Then I had a dream as I slept that night, and it wasn't a dream, it was an astral encounter where I felt like the same creature that Kreda Mutwa had painted, that he had been speaking about, showed up in my dream. And he just wanted to make eye contact. There's nothing he demanded from me. He just wanted to encounter me. And I checked in with my guides, and they said, fine, go for it. And so we looked at each other, and I felt this enormous force, this power, this heat, this energy pouring up. It came in through my solar plexus. It went up through my crown and out. And then what I felt happening, I was not in a state of mind where I could resist that. I was completely, spent in terms of my energy. And so what I found myself doing is just surrender. Not to him, but to something beyond. And I felt this other force coming in. It was like this amazing, powerful love pouring right through, out through my heart and towards him. And so this exchange, power, love, power, love. And it wasn't my doing, it was happening through me, through him. And at the end of that, he just bowed and said, thank you. This is what we have been waiting for a long time. We have been needing to find someone who could face power with power and not flinch and not be diminished.
Beautiful.
Because that's how they grow. That's their evolution.
Mm.
It's been through, they're warriors like the Klingons.
Mm.
And so they need to um, find warrior spirits that they can confront, who can teach them something different. And in this case, what is happening is he was being taught about what love truly is, not the sentimentality that we call love, but love as a force, unconditional, that embraces everything. And in light of that, he said, okay, now we're ready to go. We've learned what we came here to learn. And then in the next part of the dream, I saw thousands of them floating down this river, which symbolically, and they were just like spent. And they were heading back to the ocean. And what I heard was, our time is over now, we can leave. And I shared that 3 days later. It took me 3 days to recover from that experience. I shared that afterwards with Keda Mutwa. Interestingly, he had been going through exactly the same experience for 3 days. He was going through heavy fever. And when we shared our experiences with each other, he said, thank you. This is something that I've been awaiting for all my life, to be able to say this, that we can now, on a planetary level, be free. Because this struggle, this reptilian imposition has been going on for millennia.
But they're not gone yet.
No, they're not gone yet, but and I think what's happening now is that as the lifeblood of the reptilians, which in their view is the children, human blood, and not just that, but also terror. When we are in a state of terror, that's when we give our power over.
Yeah, they drink it up.
And if we choose not to be in terror, if we choose to be in our power, that's meeting them face to face, heart to heart, body to body, mind to mind, spirit to spirit, in a way that they can respect and also know that in the larger circle of evolution, that Gaia has chosen her own journey, which is to evolve to a different vibrational frequency, which does not require that level of violence, fear, and pain. And I think this is what we're coming to now. This is where we're going as warriors and as alchemists, both.
You know, it's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that personal experience with us. Sasha Stone also had, we talked about that. It looks like, and I have had the encounter too, and it's like standing up to that seems to be almost like a rite of passage for who is going to be in a leadership position. And I use those terms loosely because I don't want any ego attached to any of it. But I do want to address this and tell you a little bit about my work in the years that I was doing hands-on healing, which wasn't hands-on Reiki type healing. I was using crystal Vogel. In fact, I had Dan Willis last night talking about Vogel crystals and technology. And I was working with that system and also the psychic faculty. And very quick, I had a center in Rome called Lightworks. Very quickly, when I started doing that work, people were coming, I was recognizing that people were coming in with entities, attachments, and they got bigger and bigger and bigger until there's always a little humor here. Going into the waiting room, because I always had clients waiting, was like Whoopi Goldberg in Ghost when she said, all right, I hear you, one at a time here. Because I'd walk into the waiting room, there'd be people sitting there, and then these monstrous entities, polar bears with blood coming out of their teeth and evil looking creatures. And one of them was an insectoid attachment sitting in the waiting room. And this little person would be like, thank you so much, Patricia. And it's like polar bear 2, the story goes. So this woman comes in, and I have to keep my demeanor because working in that way, my third eye was blast open all the time. There was no time to gently reopen or close. It was just back-to-back people. So I go in and this woman says, "It's all right, Patricia, I understand." And behind her appear these two gigantic polar bears, and they're dripping blood like they've just eaten, right? And I telepathically said to them, "Okay, I'm not impressed. So please drop the fear thing. Please, you can trust me." And she walked into my office, and so many times when I'd be starting the session, the entities would address me. They were terrified of me, or they were looking like they wanted to attack me. But what they really were doing was trying to get help. And when I would shrink them down to let them understand that I wasn't impressed. That was my one-liner. I'm not impressed. I'm not here to interfere. Right. So you can relax, you can let go. And it would be like plop. And then I would see other layers or other dimensions of these creatures, these holographs, whatever you want to call them. And so many times they would tell me that they were trapped. They didn't want to be there. They don't even know how they got there. They didn't have evil intent. They just got trapped, and they want to get free, but they're afraid because they don't know any other way of being. They feed on this energy. And when I was doing that healing work, I would always tell them, "I'm here for you and for the person before me too. I'm not interfering, I'm assisting." And so I got so used to working that way and dealing with otherworldly, other dimensional experiences of these beings that I thought, wow, I guess I'm being tested here to see if I've really got the mettle to do this work. But I just think that a lot of people who are really on this path of serving are being confronted with this, and knowing that you can deal with it and project love out, which is not easy when you've got a monstrous entity looking like it wants to consume you. I mean, the one time was this insectoid ET lurching, ready to attack. And it's really, sometimes it takes a lot. Like you said, you were exhausted after. It takes a lot to hold that place in space. And be in your integrity. And no matter how much we talk about the one heart, when you've got something like that lurching at you, it's all you can do to pull back from fear and just stand in that strength and integrity and love.
Now, this is the whole loosh extraction mechanism, the energy siphoning system that is part of some of the reptilian agenda, is documented so well in the Monster Inc. movies and how it's brought down. If you remember that little child, Boo, Patricia loves my movie references. She would have been on the camera. She loves it.
I think it's adorable.
Is when Sully, and I can't remember the big one's name. Anyway, they go and they what the whole thing is, many of you have seen this, is they get points and what have you, credits, these monsters, by going in and scaring kids, right? And then the more fear and scare they get into the kid, the monster in the closet, the monster under the bed, lots of different monsters in this movie, the more that they, more accolades they get. Until they encounter this girl, when they come in to scare her in her room, she starts giggling. And she breaks down the whole system, and that's how it's broken down. But anyway, that's what we're talking about here. And Chris Guy, with his Just Say No movement, I'm not sure if he's realized this on the esoteric level. He obviously has. But the Just Say No is not just saying no. It's nothing to do with that. It's just standing in sovereignty. Yeah. Because when you do that, when you stand with the God ray activated, you say no automatically, because no darkness that comes to control you can. This is what we're talking about. This is what the reptilians... I've experienced this so much in dreams as a kid, where I would be scared by stuff, whether it be ghosts or entities or whatever manifestation it was. And this went on for a long time until I was about 11 or 12. And then I would suddenly, rather than run, I would turn around and run towards what it was that was scaring me. And boom, I'd wake up every time. So this is the same stuff. So the catalysts for this standing up right now is this hero. It's kind of a bit of an egoic term, but it's this hero energy, right? That many of us are waking up to right now, that other people, because courage is contagious, that many people, and it's energetic, are getting the courage of Chris Sky, of conversations like this, to say, you know what, let's stand in sovereignty, let's remember who we are. And then the reptilians say, actually, that's all I was wanting from you. I was wanting the love. I was wanting the opposition to say, you're not conquerable. Now it's the wrong paradigm when we talk about the God within, but that's sort of what we're talking about here. And just finally, when I talk about the collective child, the inner child healing of humanity right now, we're facing the bully in the playground, right? One of the most terrifying things, if many of you were bullied as a kid in school, I was very lucky that didn't happen to me, but I know many of my friends, I experienced it, I saw it, is that the deep state is in the playground right now, and we're being faced with fists, or we're being faced with coming together with your brother or sister or whoever and saying, no, and you're going to hit the bully back. And guess what? The bully is going to say, shit, I don't want that. I'm not going near them again. And this is what's happening all over the planet right now. But it will come, because we're still in sort of the clings of some of the third density. It will come in some of these physical and difficult, challenging formats. But it's up to us to come together.
That's a very good example, because the essence of a bully is to disseminate terror. And when you don't bow down to it, they don't know what to do. And it's so true.
Yeah.
I always tell, I've got a friend right now who's being bullied by an adult bully situation. And I said, when are you going to stop trying to be the nice guy? Stand up to that SOB.
Right.
And he goes, well, you've got a different style than I do. I was like, well, try it. That SOB. Come on, man. And, sorry for being loud, but that's what's happening. That's what's being evoked in the human race. And that's why, and probably a conclusionary thought here, is why I brought up the whole idea that maybe in many ways, DJT not returning is what we need now. Not that we're going to fall further into the dark, but that we're not going to give away this momentum to the illusion of, oh, here he comes back, our hero. Fixed it. Like you said, like you said, we're in the thick of it here. We're in the thick of it. We've got to do this. And we've been saying this forever. We have to do it. Well, here we are. And guess what? People are rising.
Right.
People are rising. Madrid, I just accidentally saw this video of Madrid and went, oh my God, look at this. The millions, the streets were just, there was no end to the human outcry. And so I guess I'd like to start to round up our conversation here and say that, wow, we've covered a lot of different aspects today, as we do, the three of us, but that we may have strayed away from the theme, white hat, black hat, white hat, but not really, because we've talked about so many aspects of that in so many different layers. And I hope that the people that have been listening understand the essence. I know the resistance to the Trump adoration syndrome. People get very uncomfortable with any other alternative, but he's coming back. And I just hope that the people that have been listening and grasping what we're trying to say about that, because ideally in a perfect world, he never would have left and we would have had that epiphany. But meanwhile, what I think the three of us are trying to say is we don't need that to rise to our greatness. And perhaps not only do we not need it, do we not need the white hats to combat the dark hats, the black hats, but that we need to not need it. Would you give me your closing thought, David, and then Kiara, and then I guess we'll round this up.
Yeah, I kind of hope they don't come back. We're in the hero awakening phase right now, and it's going to be messy in some parts, but we'll get through this. And I totally agree with what you said. We couldn't be going through this hero awakening, cracking open of the hashtag Orion War Vets or whatever you want to call that. We couldn't be going through this session, this phase, however long it lasts, without the letting go of this paradigm, someone's going to come and save us. So that's the choice you have right now, my friends. It is, and you've had this since you were born, but now you can't escape it. And the choice is this: you will govern your life, or you will be governed. You cannot sit in the middle of that right now. If you sit in the middle, you will be governed. All right.
That's
now,
right.
that will take you in different directions, but that's the choice you have. It's a beautiful choice. Embrace it, meditate on it, and let's get to work.
Beautiful. Oh, you are such a
Well
black
said.
man, David. Kiara, what do you have to say?
Yeah. So, people have talked about getting your popcorn ready.
Yeah.
And, I think this is all about popcorn. Look what happened 20 years ago with 9/11. And it took a long time for people to even begin to consider that it was a different story than what we had been told. Same thing happening right now with the election fraud, with the lockdown dramas, with the the stories that have been built around this. It takes time for people to wake up. But I also feel that once people do start waking up, once they're personally affected, so 9/11 didn't affect people personally, except if you were in New York or if you're in certain, sections. But this is affecting every single one of us personally. And that's when people start taking a stance.
That's right.
Then they get off the wall. Then they start sticking up for themselves and becoming sovereign. And I see this happening everywhere, every single country. People I didn't expect. It also creates a lot of schism, of course. And all of us have been experiencing that. And it's not easy to go through all that. But it also helps us to confront those shadows within ourselves, the dark hats, the black hats within ourselves, where we've told ourselves stories, where we've manipulated things around us in ways that are not necessarily nice, where we've held off and become afraid. And every single initiation is about fear. The pyramids in the background here. And Patricia, you know this from your experiences in Egypt, where all these initiations in the temples were all about confronting fear on different levels, until finally in the great initiation in the pyramids, you learn to merge with the light body, which to me means bringing all the aspects together, the divine and the human, the dark and the light, the ancient and the future. It's all coming together in a way that hasn't been declared yet. And I think that's one of the biggest fears that we carry is the fear of the unknown. It's the fear of death. It's the fear of extinction.
Mm-hmm.
It's the fear of losing our way of life. And that's why we so desperately want to go back to the past. We can't. This is our journey forward now, even if it's into the unknown. And that's why we go back to that, metaphor of the caterpillar. The caterpillar can dream of a butterfly, but it never actually becomes one until it goes through the cocooning, until it dissolves every single aspect of its old identity. And I think we're going through that as a human race right now. And that's why it's not easy. I was looking at a quote from Charles Dickens lately, A Tale of Two Cities, where he says, I'll read this. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
Yeah.
It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. And that's what creates the story.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kiara. All right, guys. I have a very hard time stopping a conversation with two beautiful beings, but I also know that we're running close up to 2 hours. So I'm going to close it up now with a thought, and that is regarding the popcorn concept. Forget the popcorn. Get out your lightsaber. Don't sit back and make your popcorn and watch it play out. Grab your lightsaber and be on the front lines. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're out there screaming like some of us, but that you're holding that saber ready to stand for what you believe in, for your humanity, for your family, for your existence, for planet Earth. And we will succeed. So thank you, my beautiful brothers. I love you. I just, you're just, every time we talk, my heart fills. And we'll do that again really soon. Thank you for being who you are, what you're doing. And thank you to everyone who's listening. And if I got up your nose with my Trump adoration syndrome, please hear the deeper message. Okay? All right. Thank you all. Thank you for tuning in to Beyond the Matrix. Thank you for thinking outside the box. And I'll be back really soon. I've got quite a lineup. As you noticed, when I put out the question, if there's nobody out there, I guess I won't be doing this anymore. Let me know. And you started to come back and you started to subscribe. And, I don't ask for donations. I don't ask for anything except for your presence. If you'll be there, I'll be there. This is a lot of work. It comes from our hearts. We're doing this without any other intent other than to help. So just please push that like button, push the subscribe button, tell everybody, hey, check out this site, check out this channel, and participate in some way. Blessings to you all. Thank you. I'll talk to you soon. This is Patricia Cori, Kiara, and David signing out for now.